All India Radio presents Morning News. Good morning, I'm Sunil Verma and with me is VC Pramod. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says, huge market for clean energy technologies emerging in India. Calls on G7 nations to invest in India's clean energy transition. Prime Minister Modi holds bilateral meetings with German Chancellor, Presidents of European Commission and South Africa and Canadian Prime Minister. 47th meeting of GST Council to begin today in Chandigarh. Government to make 6 airbags mandatory in 8-seater vehicles, says Union Minister Nitin Gadkari. Income inequality declined in India during COVID-19, says SBI report. Enforcement Directorate summons Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Raut for questioning today in 2 separate money laundering cases. Deepak Punia wins bronze medal at Under-23 Asian Wrestling Championships at Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. And in cricket, second and final T20 international match between India and Ireland to be played in Dublin this evening. As our nation celebrates the 75th year of independence, a series of events is being organized by the government as a part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. To commemorate the occasion as a Jan Utsav, All India Radio News brings its listeners a special quiz on India's freedom movement and its glorious history. Recalling our yesterday's question. The first man to be arrested in Bihar under Defence of India Ordinance in 1940, this freedom fighter went to Afghanistan during the Quit India movement to collect firearms and ammunition. Name the revolutionary. The correct answer is Basavan Singh. AIR News got an overwhelming response from its listeners from across the world, and the one lucky winner of the quiz is S. Vardarajan from Mahatma Gandhi Nagar, Madurai in Tamil Nadu.
I'm constantly listening the All India Radio news item for more than 3 decades. This is the only organization carries the authentication of all the news, including the news items. The major import is coming in the All India Radio. I'm hearing you are using apt word that really pulled every listener. Please continue the same. I'm constantly listening Man Ki Baat program, sending my national program of talks.
And coming to our today's question, which is the 92nd of the Amrit Mahotsav quiz in English. Shirish Kumar Mehta, who became a martyr holding the tricolour at the age of just 15 years, hails from which place? To repeat the question, Shirish Kumar Mehta, who became a martyr holding the tricolour at the age of just 15 years, hails from which place? Listeners can respond to the question over WhatsApp on 8826546262, that is 8826546262, or through email on amritmahotsavquiz@prasarbharati.gov.in. One lucky participant will be selected as a winner and will be announced in tomorrow's morning news. The winner will be awarded a certificate and a token prize. And now, the news in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi urged the rich countries of G7 to support India's efforts for green growth, clean energy, sustainable lifestyles and global well-being. He said a huge market for clean energy technologies is emerging in India today. Mr. Modi asked G7 countries to invest in research, innovation and manufacturing in this field. He added that during the pandemic, India found many creative ways to use digital technology in the health sector. He urged G7 countries to help India take these innovations to other developing countries. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also stressed that energy access should not be the privilege of only the rich, as a poor family has the same rights on energy. He was speaking on the second day's session on climate, energy and health at Schloss Elmau in Germany. Mr. Modi said 17% of the world's population resides in India, but the country's contribution to global carbon emissions is only 5%. He highlighted that the main reason behind this is lifestyle, which is based on the theory of coexistence with nature. Mr. Modi said India's dedication to its climate commitments is evident from the nation's performance. He pointed out that India achieved the target of 40% energy capacity from non-fossil sources 9 years before time. The target of 10% ethanol blending in petrol has been achieved 5 months before time. He stated that India has the world's first fully solar-powered operated airport, and India's huge railway system will become net zero carbon emitter in this decade. Former diplomat G. Parthasarathi opines that the Prime Minister's far-reaching speech reflects India's transparent policy on energy conservation.
Prime Minister Modi today delivered a really far-reaching speech which spelled out India's policy in working in cooperation with the rest of the world and particularly the advanced countries. And he laid a great emphasis on the need to curb growing conditions of the environment which were becoming worse. And what he suggested was that the developed countries, G7 as they are called, should join India and cooperate with us in innovative technologies, digital technologies to curb pollution and to really give the world a better environment to live in.
The Prime Minister will participate in another G7 session on food security and advancing gender equality later today. He held bilateral meetings with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Mr. Modi and the German Chancellor discussed ways to further diversify the India-Germany friendship for the benefit of the people and the entire planet. The Group of Seven, that is G7, is an intergovernmental political grouping consisting of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK and the US. The German presidency has invited Argentina, India, Indonesia, Senegal and South Africa to the G7 summit in Elmau, Bavaria.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi met German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on the sidelines of the G7 summit at Schloss Elmau in Germany. Mr. Modi thanked Chancellor Scholz for the invitation to the G7 summit. The two leaders emphasized the need to take forward their green and sustainable development partnership. Discussions covered issues like climate action, provision of climate financing and technology transfer. Both leaders also agreed on the need to further deepen trade, investment and people-to-people ties. They also discussed greater coordination in international bodies, particularly in the context of India's forthcoming G20 presidency. The two leaders also exchanged views on regional and global developments. Prime Minister Modi also held bilateral talks with his Canadian counterpart, Justin Trudeau. The leaders discussed bilateral ties and agreed to expand trade and economic linkages, cooperation in security and counter-terrorism, as well as P2P ties. Mr. Modi and President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen also held talks. Issues such as stronger trade ties, cooperation to mitigate climate change, emerging technologies and cultural linkages were discussed during the meeting. Prime Minister Modi also met South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Both leaders reviewed the progress made in bilateral relations between the two countries, particularly following the signing of the Strategic Program of Cooperation in 2019. They expressed satisfaction at the progress achieved in defense, education and agriculture sectors and reiterated the need for further deepening bilateral cooperation in areas like trade and investment, food security and defense. Both leaders also welcomed the recent WTO agreement that supports the production of COVID vaccines in developing countries. India and South Africa had submitted the first proposal suggesting a waiver of all WTO members on the implementation of certain provisions of the TRIPS agreement in relation to the prevention, containment or treatment of COVID-19. Discussions were also held on continued coordination in multilateral bodies and the need for their reform, particularly the UN Security Council. On his way back to India from Germany, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will make a brief stopover in Abu Dhabi, UAE, for a meeting with President of the UAE and ruler of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan today. He will convey personal condolences on the passing away of Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the former UAE President and ruler of Abu Dhabi.
A 5-day UN Ocean Conference kicked off yesterday with Kenya and Portugal being the co-hosts. Leaders from over 130 countries from across the world will deliberate for 5 days to find an international agreement on protecting the world's oceans, seas and marine resources. Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh is leading the Indian delegation. On the first day, the minister had bilateral talks with a number of ministers from different countries attending the meet. Today, Dr. Jitendra Singh is scheduled to present India's statement before the full house of the UN meet. The Ocean Conference comes at a crucial juncture as the world is seeking to address many of the challenges requiring structural transformations and innovative and green solutions to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 14. The SDG calls for conservation and sustainable use of the oceans, seas and marine resources. The 47th meeting of the GST Council will be held in Chandigarh from today. The meeting will be chaired by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. The two-day meeting of the GST Council will be attended by Minister of State for Finance Pankaj Chaudhary, Finance Ministers of States and Union Territories, and senior officers from Union Government and States. Last GST Council's meeting, which was held in New Delhi, had recommended to defer the decision to change the rates on textiles. The GST Council had decided to retain the status quo on GST rate on textile to 5%.
The SBI Eco-Rap research report said that the inequality of income in India has declined significantly since financial year 2017. The report said that the income inequality in the country has also declined during COVID-19. According to the report, authored by Soumya Kanti Ghosh, Group Chief Economic Advisor SBI, India has done quite well during the pandemic in terms of navigating income shocks across deciles of population. The report also mentioned that India's poverty ratio has also declined to 17.9% in 2020-21 from 21.9% in 2011-12.
Road Transport and Highways Minister Nitin Gadkari has said that the government will make it mandatory for car makers to provide a minimum of 6 airbags in motor vehicles that can carry up to 8 passengers. Addressing Intel India Safety Pioneers Conference 2022, Mr. Gadkari said, every year around 1.5 lakh people are killed in 5 lakh accidents across the country.
We need to work on road engineering and vehicle engineering, enforcement, education, and somewhere we need cooperation from the automobile manufacturers. We have decided to 6 airbags. Some of the company people constantly making opposition for that. We want to save the life of the people, and that is exactly the reason that we need the cooperation from the stakeholders. The technology is very important, which should be economically viable. The PPP model for intelligent transport system and technology we need to find out.
An airbag is a vehicle occupant restraint system which interferes between the driver and the vehicle's dashboard during a collision, thereby preventing serious injuries. Mr. Gadkari said, we need cooperation from all stakeholders, including automobile industry.
Every year we have 5 lakh accidents and 1.5 lakh deaths and 3 lakh serious injuries. 400 accidental deaths per hour in the country. This is the statistic. Socioeconomic loss is 3.1%, 14% of GDP, and 70% of deaths in the age group of 18 to 40 years.
You are listening to the morning news on All India Radio. A reminder of the headlines before we move on. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says huge market for clean energy technology is emerging in India. Calls on G7 nations to invest in India's clean energy transition. Prime Minister Modi holds bilateral meetings with German Chancellor, Presidents of European Commission and South Africa and Canadian Prime Minister. 47th meeting of GST Council to begin today in Chandigarh. Government to make 6 airbags mandatory in 8-seater vehicles, says Union Minister Nitin Gadkari. Income inequality declined in India during COVID-19, says SBI report. Enforcement Directorate summons Shiva Sena leader Sanjay Raut for questioning today in 2 separate money laundering cases. Deepak Punia wins bronze medal at the Under-23 Asian Wrestling Championships at Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. And in cricket, second and final T20 international match between India and Ireland to be played in Dublin this evening. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
क्या आप कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम्स की तैयारी कर रहे हैं? आपके लिए ऑल इंडिया रेडियो लाया है प्रोग्राम अभ्यास, एक ऐसा कार्यक्रम जहां हमें आप प्रश्न भेजते हैं व्हाट्सएप नंबर 9289094044 पर या फिर ईमेल करते हैं abhyas.airnews www.radiotherapy@gmail.com पर। और हमारे एक्सपर्ट देते हैं आपके प्रश्नों के उत्तर हर शनिवार रात 9:30 बजे। इस वर्ग का विषय है आधुनिक इतिहास यानी कि मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री और आपके सवाल प्राप्त करने की अंतिम तारीख 29 जून। आपका अभ्यास हमारा प्रयास।
अपने बिजनेस को बढ़ाने के लिए लीजिए आकाशवाणी का सहयोग और दीजिए उसे बुलंदियों के पंख।
आपका बिजनेस लोकल है या राष्ट्रीय, आकाशवाणी देती है उपभोक्ताओं तक पहुंचने का हर विकल्प।
और अब तो आप घर, दफ्तर या दुकान पर बैठे बैठे कर सकते हैं आकाशवाणी के किसी भी केंद्र के लिए विज्ञापनों की बुकिंग।
आकाशवाणी के विभिन्न चैनलों पर विज्ञापन देना सुलभ और सस्ता।
बुकिंग है तो संपर्क करें 8700014242 पर।
8700014242।
The Enforcement Directorate, ED, has summoned Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Raut today for questioning in 2 separate money laundering cases. The notice from ED required him to depose at its South Mumbai office in connection with the acquisition of properties by his wife and associates. The first case pertains to the ED registering a case where Diwan Housing Finance Corporation Limited, DHFL's erstwhile promoters Kapil Vadhavan and his brother Dheeraj are accused of a 34,615 crore rupees loan fraud along with builder Sudhakar Shetty of Sahana Group. The ED registered the DHFL money laundering case based on a CBI FIR and while examining documents collected during the investigation found suspicious entries linked to Sanjay Raut. The second case in which Raut has been called for questioning is related to a 1,200 crore rupees Chaul redevelopment fraud. In Maharashtra, amid the ongoing political turmoil, the rebel camp of Eknath Shinde is coming out with open letters directed towards Shiv Sena President Uddhav Thackeray. In a second such letter that was posted on the Twitter handle of Deepak Kesarkar yesterday, it said that the alliance of BJP and Shiv Sena is in line with the verdict given by the people of Maharashtra. He exuded confidence that the alliance will take Maharashtra to greater heights of development. We have a report.
Reiterating for the Shiv Sena BJP alliance, leader from the Eknath Shinde camp, Deepak Kesarkar, said that the fight is for the party's very existence, for Marathi and Hindutva's pride. He said, "This is not a rebellion but a fight for Shiv Sena's self-esteem and they will not stop until they emerge victorious." He urged Uddhav Thackeray to consider the view and make a new alliance with the BJP. He said, at the cost of Shiv Sena, NCP and Congress are enjoying power and alleged that they are also making efforts to finish the very foundation of the party. Meanwhile, BJP leader Sudhir Mungantiwar said that when a proposal from Shiv Sena comes, that time they will discuss it in their core committee meeting. He said his party is watching all the political developments unfolding in the state closely. He clarified that even Eknath Shinde has not given any proposal to the BJP on new government formation. Kunal Shinde, AIR News, Mumbai.
The Supreme Court has granted interim relief to Eknath Shinde and his rebel MLA group by extending the time to file response to the disqualification notice sent by Deputy Speaker till the 12th of July. The Supreme Court also refused to pass any interim order on the plea that there should not be any floor test in the Assembly till the 11th of July. Meanwhile, the court also directed the Maharashtra government to protect life, liberty and property of 39 rebel Shiv Sena MLAs and their family members. And now let's listen to our special program Azadi Ka Safar, highlighting the importance of the day during the freedom struggle.
आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव।
Azadi Ka Safar with AIR News, Birth of a Nation.
India's glorious freedom struggle is one of the greatest struggles the modern world has ever witnessed. AIR News brings you a glimpse of the struggle every day.
In today's episode, we remember freedom fighter and former Prime Minister of India, Pamulaparthi Venkata Narasimha Rao, who was born on the 28th of June 1921 at Karimnagar, Hyderabad. He is often referred to as the father of Indian economic reforms.
P.V. Narasimha Rao, popularly known as PV,
studied in Osmania University, Hyderabad, Bombay University and the Nagpur University. He was part of the Vande Mataram movement in the late 1930s in the Hyderabad state. Along with his distant cousins, Pamulaparthi Sadasiv Rao, Raja Narendra and Devulapalli Damodar Rao, P.V. Narasimha Rao edited a Telugu weekly magazine called Kakatiya Patrika in the 1940s. Both P.V. Narasimha Rao and Sadasiva Rao contributed articles under the pen name Jaya Vijaya.
After independence, Rao joined politics and held many important portfolios. P.V. Narasimha Rao became the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh in 1971 and implemented land reforms and land ceiling acts strictly.
He also secured reservation for the so-called lower castes in politics during his tenure. He was elected to the Lok Sabha in 1977 and handled several diverse portfolios, most significantly home, defence and foreign affairs.
P.V. Narasimha Rao became Prime Minister of India in 1991 and successfully led the liberalization of the Indian economy. The reforms opened up the Indian economy to foreign investment, reformed capital markets, deregulated domestic business and reformed the trade regime.
The impact of these reforms may be gauged from the fact that total foreign investment in India grew from $132 million in 1991-92 to $5.3 billion in 1995-96. The measures continue to impact the influx of foreign portfolio investment in India and have helped India become a strong global economy.
P.V. Narasimha Rao had special interest in Indian philosophy and culture, writing fiction and political commentary, learning languages, writing poems in Telugu and Hindi. He spoke 17 languages.
Rao suffered a heart attack on the 9th of December 2004 and died 14 days later at the age of 83. AIR News salutes the father of Indian economic reforms, P.V. Narasimha Rao.
We also remember freedom fighter Shiv Prasad Gupta, who was born on the 28th of June 1883. A close associate of Mahatma Gandhi, Shiv Prasad devoted his entire life to actively participate, assist and give financial aid to the various movements of the freedom struggle. Nationalist leaders including Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Mahamana Madan Mohan Malviya often stayed with Shiv Prasad on their visit to Varanasi and relied upon his advice and support.
The Hindi daily Aaj was started by Gupta in 1920 in order to facilitate the Indian struggle for freedom. Gupta was associated with the Indian National Congress as its treasurer for many years. He founded the Mahatma Gandhi Kashi Vidyapeeth in Varanasi to give a chance to those youths who had left their studies to join the struggle for freedom.
Shiv Prasad gave 150 acres of land for setting up the first Gandhi ashram in India in Akbarpur to promote Khadi.
Gandhiji conferred upon Shiv Prasad Gupta the title of Rashtra Ratna, that is, Jewel of the Nation. He was instrumental in organizing the 1928 session of the Indian National Congress at Varanasi at his residence Seva Upvan, named so by Gandhiji as the home was synonymous with the hospitality the people were offered. Shiv Prasad gave 1,01,000 rupees as the first donation to build Banaras Hindu University.
The great nationalist breathed his last on the 24th of April 1944. AIR News salutes the great freedom fighter.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Azadi Ka Safar with AIR News. See you in the next episode tomorrow.
A quantity of 187,86,000 metric tons of wheat has been procured by the government so far in Rabi marketing season 2022-23, benefiting about 17,85,000 farmers with minimum support price value of over 37,852 crore. A large number of Chinese fans of Indian classical dance paid emotional tributes to Changchun, China's fabled Indian classical dancer. They gathered in Beijing to watch a dazzling show of Indian classical dance performances in her memory, organized at Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank AIIB Auditorium on Friday. Besides hundreds of Chinese students and fans, the event was attended by India's ambassador to China, Pradeep Kumar Rawat, and president of AIIB, Chin Likun, who was earlier China's vice minister of finance. The audience applauded the classical dance performances by young Chinese disciples as well as highly acclaimed professionals, mostly Changchun students who dedicated their lives for Indian classical dance forms in China.
It appeared that probably in her earlier birth she was born in India and carried that bond to this birth in China. Her devotion to Indian art form was complete. The energy which radiated out of that devotion attracted many students even during a phase when our bilateral relations were undergoing some turbulence. It would be correct to say that Madam Changchun became a movement unto herself. As a teacher, she inspired many young Chinese.
Tokyo Olympian Deepak Punia won a bronze medal after defeating Maksad Satibaldi in the 86 kg freestyle weight category at the Under-23 Asian Wrestling Championship 2022 in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. Despite a win, it was an unimpressive result from him as the Indian contingent was expecting a better outing from the World Championship silver medalist in the tournament. In cricket, the second and final T20 international match between India and Ireland will be played in Dublin today. The match will start at 9 p.m. Indian time. India defeated hosts Ireland on Sunday by 7 wickets in the rain-interrupted opening encounter of the two-match series. The match was reduced to 12 overs a side after rain interrupted the start of play. The two-match series will act as a dress rehearsal for India's tour to England starting from the 1st of July. And now an overview of today's newspapers. At the G7 summit, Prime Minister Modi pushes for wider energy access is the headline in Hindustan Times. The statesman quotes the PM as saying that India is firm in its climate commitment. G7 may manipulate oil price to punish Russia, writes the Times of India. 94,281 aspirants vie for IAF Agnipath, 8 days left for listing, reports the Pioneer. Niti Aayog moots social security cover, benefits for gig workers, headlines the Hindu business line. India's gig workforce to reach 2.35 crore by 2030, writes the Hindu. Clamp down and unclear policy is making crypto exchange founders to move out of the country, reports the Indian Express. For the first time, ISRO is all set to launch private payloads in space, writes the Tribune. And finally, the monsoon is just a few days away from Delhi. According to IMD, it is expected to yield good rainfall in the first 10 days, reports the Asian Age.
Before we end the bulletin, a reminder of today's question of Amrit Mahotsav quiz. Shirish Kumar Mehta, who became a martyr, holding the tricolour at just the age of 15 years, hails from which place? WhatsApp your response on 8826546262. And now, before we end the bulletins, the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says, huge market for clean energy technology is emerging in India. Calls on G7 nations to invest in India's clean energy transition. Prime Minister Modi holds bilateral meetings with German Chancellor, Presidents of European Commission and South Africa and Canadian Prime Minister. 47th meeting of GST Council to begin today in Chandigarh. Government to make 6 airbags mandatory in 8-seater vehicles, says Union Minister Nitin Gadkari. Income inequality declined in India during COVID-19, says SBI report. Enforcement Directorate summons Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Raut for questioning today in 2 separate money laundering cases. Deepak Punia wins bronze medal at Under-23 Asian Wrestling Championships at Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. And in cricket, second and final T20 international match between India and Ireland to be played in Dublin this evening. For details of these stories and more, log on to our website www.newsonair.gov.in and News on AIR app. And with that, we end the morning news. Have a nice day.